Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more 2025 to 2026 state governments and officials. In this episode, we're looking at the state of Ohio. So, yeah, with that said, let's get into this. If I can find my mouse. The state of Ohio is known as the Buckeye State. Thus, why the University of Ohio State is known as the Ohio State Buckeyes. There you can see where it sits among the United States themselves. The capital of Ohio is Columbus, but it's claimed to be the largest city, but there are large metro and urban areas as well, like Cleveland and Cincinnati. So, yeah. And usually, if you look at the state of Ohio, Cincinnati is right about here. Columbus goes about right here in the middle, and then up here on the lake. Cleveland. So, if you want to kind of know, it runs along almost in a line there, like that, across Ohio. But let's go ahead and dig into the state here a bit. Midwest region and borders the Canadian province of Ontario to the north via Lake Erie, Pennsylvania to the east, West Virginia to the southeast, Kentucky to the southwest, and Indiana to the west, and Michigan to the northwest. Of the 50 U.S. states, it is the 34th largest by area. Little beyond midway, so. But it has a population of nearly 11.9 million people, which is the 7th most populous, making it the 10th most densely populated state. So, yeah. It's up there in size. It's a little under the halfway mark, but there's a lot of people. So very, very populated. Talked about Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, but they have other big cities, Dayton, Akron, and Toledo. And it's nicknamed the Buckeye State after the Buckeye trees. So yeah. A general look at Ohio. Now, let's dig into their constitutional history here. Boom, boom. Let's see. In 1803, Ohio became the 17th state and has had 3 constitutions. One before, and 2 since statehood was granted. The current constitution goes all the way back to 1851, but has been heavily amended since its adoption. The Northwest Ordinance, which is just this stretch of land going into Ohio and Indiana, Illinois, that area of the country, Michigan, saying, yeah, because at that point, for the U.S., that was the Northwest. But 1802 and finally taking effect in 1803, Ohio is a state. So yeah, the Constitutional Convention was held in November 1802, but it took place 1803 when they became a state. Then there was the 1851 Constitution. So the first would be part of the Northwest Ordinance. So yeah, where it was kind of a territorial constitution. Since there was a state, though, you have the 1803 one and then the current, the 1851 Constitution, which is their, like I said, current constitution. They did have a convention in 1873, but it doesn't look like it created a new constitution. Soundly defeated by the voters. And an amendment in 1903, though, granted the governor veto powers. 1912, a bunch of amendments went in. So yeah, kind of the makeup of how their constitutions came about. So they're on their second since they've been a state. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the government. Consists of executive, judicial, legislative branch. State laws are carried out by 6 elected statewide officials. The chief executive, your governor, and their second in command, the lieutenant governor. You have the secretary of state, attorney general, state treasurer, and state auditor, and the staff of employees of the executive branch agencies and members of the cabinet and such. All of the elected statewide for 4-year terms. So everybody in the state votes for them. They serve a term of 4 years. And of course, the governor and lieutenant governor run as running mates on one ticket. So you have a cabinet, several cabinet and administrative departments, and notices of the proposed rules are published in the Register of Ohio. But with that said, let's look at Ohio by its members here. Of course, you have the governor, Mike DeWine, took office 2018 or so, or maybe that was just when he's elected in, took office 2019. I can't remember, but anyway, around that time. So he's been in there for a little bit. He's got his cabinet, which has the Adjutant General, Department of Justice, or no, Adjutant General is your military, National Guard. And then you got the Department of Administrative Services, the Department of Aging, Department of Agriculture, Air Quality Development Authority, the Arts Council, Department of Behavioral Health, Broadcast Educational Media Commission, the Office of Budget and Management, the Department of Children and Youth, the Department of Commerce, the Consumers Council, the Ohio Deaf and Blind Education Services, the Department of Development, and the Department of Developmental Disabilities, the Department of Education and Workforce, the Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Health, Department of Higher Education, Housing Finance Agency, the Inspector General, the Department of Insurance, Department of Job and Family Services, the Lottery Commission, the Department of Medicaid, Department of Natural Resources, opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, the Office of the Ohio Public Defender, Department of Public Safety, the Public Utilities Commission, the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, the State Board of Education, the State Library of Ohio Department, the Board of Tax Appeals, Department of Taxation, Department of Transportation, Department of Veterans Services, the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, and the Department of Youth Services. So that's all the administrative agencies and cabinet posts that serve under the governor. We have the lieutenant governor, former Ohio State coach Jim Tressel. You have the attorney general Dave Yost. You have the the auditor. Yeah, the state auditor, Keith Faber. The Secretary of State, Frank LaRose. Images down there. And the Ohio Treasurer, Robert Sprague. Now, let's go ahead and look at information on the governor himself, the position and everything. As we said, 4-year terms, elected statewide, head of the Commander-in-Chief of Ohio National Guard. He enforces state law, power to either approve or veto bills by the General Assembly, and to convene and adjourn the legislature, and the power to grant pardons except in cases of treason or impeachment. Let's see, other duties and privileges. The state of the state. It says an annual address to the General Assembly. I automatically thought the state of the state address, but makes recommendations to the legislation as well. Convening extraordinary sessions of the legislature with limited purposes. Adjourning the legislature when the two chambers cannot agree to do so themselves, not to include the privilege of adjourning the legislature past the next meeting time set for a regular session. So he can go ahead and tell them, say, if y'all can't agree, both chambers go home. So yeah. Drafting and approving a budget proposal to be sent to the General Assembly, signing and sealing all judicial commissions granted by the state of Ohio, issuing executive orders which direct cabinet agencies on how to operate, and nominating, in the event of a vacancy in the lieutenant governor's office, a new officer subject to confirmation by both chambers of the legislature. Can make vacancy appointments for all key state officials: auditor, treasurer, secretary of state, attorney general, because we already mentioned lieutenant governor. Such appointments are for the remainder of the term when the next general election is less than 40 days away and until the next general election otherwise. Making all appointments not otherwise provided for with the advice and consent of the Senate unless they refuse to act, in which case the governor's appointee takes offices by default, and sitting in the Ohio Redistricting Commission. They must be a qualified voter of the state. Must be at least 18 years of age at the time of election, resident of Ohio, a U.S. citizen. Convicted felons and those deemed by the courts as incompetent to vote are not eligible. Renewable once consecutively, so they can serve 2 consecutive terms, but there is no limit on the amount of terms served non-consecutively. So you can take a break, serve 2 straight, take a break, serve 2 straight. Or is it after you do your first 2, take a break, serve, take a break, serve, take a break, serve? Anyway, well, it says once consecutively, so it might just be one time you do the 2 in a row. But anyway, like I said, that's a look at the requirements and everything, what the governor does. Let's look at a history of the list of governors. Your current governor, Mike DeWine, as the Northwest Territory, your territorial governor, Arthur St. Clair, who was appointed by the Continental Congress, then George Washington, then John Adams. So he was in there for a while. Yeah. After that, we get the first elected governor for Ohio. As a state, Edward Tippin. Let's go back and look at Arthur St. Clair a moment, though. Scottish-born American military officer. Served in the British Army during the French and Indian War before settling in the province of Pennsylvania. But served in the American Revolutionary War. Kind of want to see this, if he served British or in the U.S. So he served in the U.S. On the U.S. side, rose to the rank of Major General. Lost his command, though, after a retreat from Fort Ticonderoga. Governor of the Northwest Territory, like we said, was in there in the Continental Congress under Washington and finally under Adams. So yeah, Arthur St. Clair. Now, we'll go down again and look at Edward Tippin. American politician, first governor elected of Ohio, and later a senator for the state of Ohio. Then you had Thomas Kirker, second governor. Samuel Huntington, Third governor, Return J. Meigs Jr. Fourth governor, 8th United States Postmaster General. Othniel Looker, governor number 5 of Ohio. Thomas Worthington, 6th governor. Ethan Allen Brown, 7th governor. Alan Trimble, 8th and 10th governor. First, while he was the Senate Speaker, so yeah, I don't know if it was the Ohio Senate or the U.S. Senate. I would probably say the Ohio Senate, so Governor and Ohio Senate Speaker. Jeremiah Morrow, Governor number 9 for the state, and the last Democratic Republican as governor, was also a United States Senator and a member of the United States House of Representatives. Trimble's back at number 10. We get Duncan MacArthur, Federalist, the 11th governor. Robert Lucas, he's got a scowl drawn on his face. First governor of the Iowa Territory, while being the 12th governor of Ohio. So he was governor of 2 different states. Central figure in the Toledo War and the Honey War. Then we got Joseph Vance, Wilson Shannon, Thomas Corwin, that name sounds familiar. Represented Ohio in both houses of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. 15th Governor of Ohio, 20th Secretary of the Treasury. So yeah, big name player in a lot of things when it comes to politics. Wilson Shannon, Thomas W. Bartley, Mordecai Bartley, William Bebb, Seabury Ford, Reuben Wood, William Medill, Salmon P. Chase, future Supreme Court Chief Justice, and he also served as a Secretary of the Treasury. So he was Governor of Ohio, Secretary of the Treasury under Lincoln, and a future Supreme Court Chief Justice. Very important character. William Dennison Jr., David Todd, John Breaux, Charles Anderson, Jacob Dawson Cox, Rutherford B. Hayes, future president, 19th president of the United States, was Cincinnati's solicitor and the 29th governor for the state of Ohio. Edward Follansbee Noyes, William Allen Hayes back again. Okay. Then Thomas L. Young, Richard M. Bishop, Charles Foster, George Hoadley, Joseph B. Foraker, James E. Campbell, William McKinley, future president. He was assassinated while president, though. 39th governor of Ohio, 25th president of the United States. And of course, his vice president is Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt Bully. Asa S. Bushnell, George K. Nash, Myron T. Herrick, John M. Pattinson, Andrew L. Harris. So now we're in the 1900s. Judson Harmon, James M. Cox, Frank B. Willis, James M. Cox back again, Harry L. Davis, A. Victor Donahue, Myers Y. Cooper, George White, Martin L. Davey, John W. Bricker, Frank Lausch, Thomas J. Herbert, Frank Lausch again, John William Brown, C. William O'Neill, Michael DeSalle, Jim Rhodes, John J. Gilligan, Jim Rhodes back again, Dick Celeste, George Voinovich, Nancy Hollister, and we get into the 2000s with Bob Taft, Ted Strickland, John Kasich, and the current governor, Mike DeWine. It's turned red toward the end here, but for quite a while, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, maybe a red, red, blue, or a blue, blue, red, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. It was very purple, but over the last few years, it's turned very red. DeWine, Kasich, Taft, Hollister, and Voinovich. So 5 of the last 6 governors have all been Republican. But yeah, look at the governorships of Ohio. Former or future presidents, Supreme Court justices. Yeah, pretty good list. Now, with that, if I can get the mouse to move properly, we'll go ahead and dig into the General Assembly. Bicameral, 2-chambered body. Your current, between Senate and House of Representatives, your current Senate president is Rob McCauley, and your current House Speaker, Matt Huffman. So they don't do like the lieutenant governor presiding over it or anything like that. So, okay, we've seen both. Pretty decent mix. So, the Senate, 33 senators with a current makeup of 24 Republicans to 9 Democrats, and the House, 99 members with a current makeup of 65 Republicans to 34 Democrats. Now, let's see. There's also a legislative agency, the Legislative Service Commission, that is a source for legal expertise and staffing and drafts that propose laws. Also helps serve as an advertisement to the general public as to what's happening inside the assembly. In both the Ohio House and Senate, a replacement is first elected by members of the relevant chamber who are affiliated with the same party as the departing member when there's a vacancy. In the House, the replacement will serve for the remainder of the term. In the Senate, the replacement will serve for the remainder of the term only if the vacancy occurred after the first 20 months of the 4-year Senate term. If it occurred during the first 20 months, then a special election will be held. So if it's early in the previous senator's term, they'll have a special election. But yeah, they don't say too much on requirements or any. They don't really mention it at all. But let's go ahead and go back over here to see if they mentioned anything in the state government of Ohio. Senators serve 4-year staggered terms. So 2 years. Representatives serve 2-year terms. So it's every 2 years. Half your Senate, the other half. And every 2 years, it's representatives. So yeah. In order for something to be made into a law, the bill must be adopted by both houses and signed by the governor. If the governor vetoes it, the General Assembly can override it with a 3/5 supermajority in both houses. And it will become a law even if the governor fails to sign or veto it within 10 days of being presented. So yeah, that's a look at the legislature. They still didn't say requirements or anything, but anyway, the judicial branch. You got the Ohio Supreme Court. There are several other levels of elected judiciary in the Ohio court system. The Court of Claims, Court of Appeals, the County Courts of Common Pleas, municipal courts and county courts, judges in Ohio who are elected except for the Court of Claims, for which judges sit by assignment of the Chief Justice. When there are temporary vacancies in elected judgeships, those vacancies are filled by assignment by the Chief Justice. So yeah, that's what it says in that. So if I can get the mouse to work for me, let's look at judiciary, which will look at more or less the same things. Supreme Court, the court of last resort, 7-justice panel. It can, on its own discretion, hear appeals from the Court of Appeals, and does have original jurisdiction over limited matters. So it can say, yeah, we want to look at the appeal, or no, we ain't looking at it. The District Court of Appeals is the intermediate level courts. So it's a court of appeals that's divided into 12 districts that have jurisdiction over appeals for common pleas, municipal and county courts in a set geographical area. They're divided into 3-judge panels, and each judge is elected. Court of Common Pleas, courts of general jurisdiction, and have jurisdiction over all justiciable matters Each county is constitutionally mandated to maintain a court of common pleas. Municipal and county courts. Ohio municipal and county courts are courts of limited jurisdiction and courts of record created by the General Assembly. They hear cases involving traffic violations, non-traffic misdemeanors, evictions, and small civil claims. So they're usually the smaller courts in an amount in controversy that does not exceed $15,000, and also conduct preliminary hearings in felony cases. So they can do the hearings, but it doesn't look like they actually try the felony cases. Mayor's courts, created by some municipalities, because remember, there's a number of different cities in Ohio of fairly good size. They hear cases involving traffic violations, violations of city ordinances, and other misdemeanors. Its courts are not considered trial courts or courts of record and are subject to the supervision of the Ohio Supreme Court. Not subject. Nor are they authorized to conduct jury trials. Presiding officer is a magistrate, not a judge, appointed by the mayor and paid by the city or village. So if they violate rules that are specifically city rules, that's where you're going to go. Finally, Court of Claims. Court of limited statewide jurisdiction that extends to matters in which the state of Ohio is a party and the state has waived its sovereign immunity by statute, and also hears appeals from decisions made by the Ohio Attorney General and claims allowed under the Victims of Crime Act. So yeah, the judiciary. Now let's dig into the courts a little bit. Here, the Ohio Supreme Court. And of course, they meet in Columbus, the capital city of Ohio. 7 members, Chief Justice, 6 associates. History, notable cases, DeRolf versus State in 1997 and Mapp versus Ohio in 61. Justices. The governor of Ohio may appoint to the court whenever there is a vacancy, because the court chief justice appoints the lower court vacancies. Your current Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court is Sharon L. Kennedy. Their associate justices under them: Patrick F. Fisher, Pat DeWine, Jennifer Brunner, Joe Dieters, Daniel R. Hawkins, and Megan E. Shanahan. As you can see over here at the side, it's mandatory retirement, so apparently they do have a point where they must retire by a certain age. Yeah, judge reaches 70 after being elected, is not prevented from completing their term of office, but there is a mandatory retirement age of 70. So once you hit that, that's your last term if you're still serving. Once the next election comes up, you gotta say, I'm retired. But they serve as a judge for at least 6 years per term. So let's look at the Ohio State Supreme Court. Now the Ohio District Court of Appeals. currently 69 courts of appeals judges, because remember, they set 3 judge panels and there's multiple appeals districts. And they show the districts, the number of judges they have here, the number of counties they cover. Some of them will be like this. Hamilton covers Cincinnati, Montgomery, Dayton, Allen, Lima, Ross for Chillicothe, Stark for Canton, where the National Football Hall of Fame is. Lucas for Toledo, Mahoning for Youngstown, Cuyahoga for Cleveland, Summit for Akron, Franklin for Columbus, Trumbull for Warren, Butler for Middletown. But you can see where the most populous ones are. Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati all one apiece, just because those cities are so big, have so many people. Look at the districts. 8th, where Cleveland is. 10th is Columbus, and 1st, Cincinnati. So yeah. And the current judges for the district courts of appeals. They serve a term of 6 years. When elected. I don't see any term limits or anything listed, so. But yeah, let's look at the District Court of Appeals. Now, the Ohio Courts of Common Pleas. Trial courts, as we talked about, general jurisdiction. Every county, all 88 of them, have a court of common pleas. The General Assembly can divide the courts of common pleas into divisions, and has done so before, making general, domestic relations, juvenile, and probate divisions. So this is kind of like the big courts. If you have anything going on, it'll go here. And then afterwards, you've got the appellate courts we looked at. They serve 6-year terms on a nonpartisan ballot, although candidates may choose to run in a partisan primary elections. And in order to be appointed or elected to the court, they must be an attorney with at least 6 years of experience in the practice of law to be on the Ohio Court of Common Pleas. And that'll bring us down to the next one. Municipal courts, limited jurisdiction, traffic, non-traffic misdemeanors, small civil claims. See, the amount in controversy does not exceed $3,000 for small claims and $15,000 for municipal court. Judges of the municipal courts are elected to 6-year terms. and must be an attorney with at least 6 years of experience in the practice of law. That takes us to the next court down the list, the Ohio Mayor's Courts. This is within the specific municipalities the mayors are head over, deal with those laws. Though there's been some serious criticism, apparently, the ACLU of Ohio criticized mayor's courts as profit-driven and undermine due process and disproportionately affect marginalized communities. It also reported evidence of racial and socioeconomic disparities. Black drivers being cited at rates far higher than their proportion of the population. But it shows the different municipalities that have mayor courts. All the way down, there's a lot of them. But yeah, mayor's courts. And with that, we have one more category of court to look at. The Ohio Court of Claims. Limited statewide jurisdiction, extending to cases against the state of Ohio in which the state has waived sovereign immunity, connected to suits against the state where plaintiffs are asking for equitable relief involving denial of access to public records by the state or any county, city, or agency. And it also hears appeals from decisions made by the Attorney General of Ohio on claims allowed under the Victims of Crime Act. The judges who sit by assignment are set there by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Ohio. Here's your current list. Judge Lisa Sadler, Judge David Kane, Magistrate Holly T. Shaver, Magistrate Robert Van Schoik, Magistrate Gary W. Peterson, Magistrate Adam Morris, and Magistrate Amber Damiani. Appeals from the Court of Claims can be heard in the 10th District Court of Appeals in Columbus. But yeah, that's a look at the government and officials for the state of Ohio. Woo! But with that, we'll go ahead and end this episode here. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something, you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.